Why do you want them to listen to your podcast?
So that when they think about starting a business, they've got the content that is pointing them in the right direction.
That is such a valuable piece of advice there.
The change in mindset makes a massive difference.
Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars.
So what does your average client look like around Atherton then? Is it, do you have like 8 jobs a day that you do, or do you do larger full day jobs?
The most I've done, I think, is 7, but generally an average day would be maybe 3 jobs. They're mostly it's acreage, like semi-rural properties. I'd probably do maybe 3 or maybe 4 jobs per day.
Okay.
I generally work, I don't know, 9 to 5 maybe on an average. I'm not very strict my schedule like that. You know, I'll start 8 o'clock on the dot and I'll finish 5 on the dot.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm pretty cruisy, so yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and you live in the right place to be cruisy. I think that's the expectation around there.
Yeah.
He's changed a lot.
Yeah, I've had to.
He's really learnt how to relax, Gary.
Yeah.
Which is good. Great. Yeah. It's been good too because having him have that flexibility so that he can be at home more too if he wants and if I need.
And that was the whole idea or the whole point of starting the business, so I could spend more time home with the family, you know, seeing the little fella grow. And it's
the best. It's so good because
I think it's really important for people starting business to have a clear goal in terms of whether they want to have a different lifestyle by running a business, or whether it's all about making as much money as possible, or whether it's about growing a team of employees, or whether it's about improving family life. And sounds like that's probably a higher value for you, is that quality time that you get to spend being able to choose what you do and how often you are out working compared to how much time you spend at home.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's also a necessity because we don't have the luxury of having any family close by. So it's just Tanel and I.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we really only have each other, and we didn't want to put him into daycare or anything like that at this stage. We're not ready for that. So getting to be at home together, it's very much what we wanted. Yeah. And
you
also,
can't put a price on that, can you?
No, you can't.
And there's always things to do at home as well, out in the garden, and things to fix, and chook pen waiting to get sorted, and so we need him at home as well.
Yeah, for sure. Now, want to break into a new segment here and talk about some more numbers, because I think that's really helpful for people to have that insight and share as much or as little as you want. But I'll preface this by saying that when I've talked to my accountants, we've looked at 3 different ways of counting your profit. So if you split it, just expenses and profit, so you just go, okay, if I've got to pay fuel and I've got to pay for insurance and I've got to pay for a mower and a vehicle and whatever else, X percentage of every dollar that comes in is going to pay those expenses, and what's left over is what I get to spend, or what I get for Kate to spend. So in that sense, most lawn care businesses where you're the only person working in the business, you don't have other employees outside of your family, are running around 50 to 60% profit, 40 to 50% expenses. If you look at it as you have to pay a wage, so you go, okay, this is a company and I'm going to pay a wage, and I'm going to count expenses outside of wages plus wages, and what's left over after all of those expenses is profit. a lot of lawn care businesses are hitting around 30%, and I see between 15 and 30%, although there's quite a lot of lawn care businesses that don't succeed because they're not running a profit, they're running negative, and they're actually not pulling a good wage at all. But the other way to split it is to go, okay, if I take that number and I go, okay, out of every dollar that comes in, what percentage do I benefit from as an individual running a business? And go, okay, every dollar that comes into a business where you're the only person working the business, somewhere around 75 to 90% or 80 to 85% is fairly close to accurate for this, is benefiting your lifestyle. So your work clothes, you're wearing them 5 days a week, 6 days a week, whatever the case is. Your vehicle, your trailer, your lawnmower, your computer, your phone are all things that you benefit from having because you're in business. Some of them you require regardless of whether you're in business or not. So they're really lifestyle benefits that bring you up to around that sort of 85% mark. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
So I guess what I'm going to ask you is how that looks for your business, because your business is very heavily focused on lifestyle. So as a single person or a family running the business where there's no outsiders working for you, if you turn over $120,000 in a year, that would mean that your lifestyle would benefit from probably close to $100,000. And I don't know what your turnover is. I'm just making numbers up there, but share as much or as little as you want about what that actually looks like for you.
Okay. Do you want me to share?
You wouldn't have to. I don't know.
So you're asking.
Feel free to say you don't want to share some things.
No, I'm happy to share. So sorry, what was the question?
So what does that look like for you in terms of your financial aspects of your business? Do those numbers sound right? They're around the 85% that you benefit from? Or?
I would say so. What was the other number you said about, what was it, 30, 40%?
So if you're talking just expenses versus what's left over, around 40% to 50% is expenses, and around 50 to 60% is yours to take home after you've paid your expenses.
Yeah, that would be pretty much right. Yeah.
Which means half of those expenses that your business has benefit your lifestyle.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, actually, I think this last year, it was close to 50% actually.
Yeah. Now, I've talked to a couple of people where they have their actual expenses down around 10%. So that varies between 10 15%, somewhere around there. And I know Mark Lattaway will be listening and he will correct me. He's one of the guys that runs a very tight ship on his numbers, and he knows exactly what his expenses are, and he keeps his expenses really low.
Yeah.
So I think his actual expenses are down somewhere around that 15% mark.
Yeah. Yep, fair enough. Yeah,
for the average person.
Sorry?
Saying for the average business like yours, your expenses can be 50%, and you go, okay, well, I'm still benefiting from that overall to the amount of, so say, if we look at, I like talking about $120,000 turnover because it's just really easy for people to listen to and to go, okay, that makes sense. $120,000 a year is $10,000 a month on average. And out of $120,000 a year, that would mean that there's $60,000 in the bank that's yours, or 80, 90, maybe even $100,000 that you benefit from as a lifestyle. So does that sound close for you?
Yeah, well, as I said, this financial year gone, we were close to 50%, but I have set a goal to bring this percentage down. So we'd probably be looking at about 30. I'd like to be around the 30%.
Expenses,
expenses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all of your insurance and fuel and maintenance of the lawnmower.
All business.
Now you're not running the Stiga. You don't have as much maintenance on the mower.
Yeah, that's it.
I had the same thing when I started up. I had a Dixon zero turn, and every time I did anything, I broke something on that machine. I worked out
Yeah.
that the amount that I spent in 1 year alone was enough to replace the machine.
Oh, yeah. Makes you think, eh?
Yeah, it
Oh,
makes
it's
you
a
think, but
zero
it also
sum game,
makes.
isn't it?
I feel like that's just life. Like you get those kinds of trials, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
tests you, and it pushes you, and it it's either going to make you or break you. And I guess that's why they say so many small businesses fail within the first 2 years, because when you're getting those kinds of trials and you don't have the money coming in as well, it can really push you over the edge.
For sure.
We were on the edge for a while,
Oh.
but we managed to hold on, and I feel like it's just starting to. We were only just saying the other day that it's really starting to smooth out in a way.
Yeah.
I've noticed that Tanel is not as stressed. He has
Very
relaxed a lot more, and I think it's because he actually has been. You have been really getting into the numbers, and especially because of like we've just finished the last financial year, and he's yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, one of the numbers I like to talk about is in terms of how you quote jobs. I recommend people look at several different rates for quoting jobs, and a lot of people talk on LMCA about hourly rate. And you've been saying you quote jobs rather than hourly rate, unless it was gardening when you started.
Yeah.
What I've heard numbers from, and I've been in business for 14, almost 15 years now, and I started at around $50 an hour when I started 14 years ago. I've heard numbers lower than that recently, and I've also heard on average now, I think people are sort of around the $80 to $120 an hour mark, and when you're talking hourly rates that they're trying to base their quotes off. And as high as $150, $170 an hour.
Yep.
But the other factor there is, and I think this goes back to the lifestyle business you're running, if you compare hourly rates with daily rates, that helps to equalize the difference between people who are bragging about doing a 15-minute job where they charged $100 and what they actually turn over in a full day tends to equalize it out a bit.
Yeah.
So the numbers that, like if you talk about your hourly rate, but let's talk about a day rate as well. And I see at the moment, I'd say $500 a day is probably the lowest you want to be aiming for. And a lot of people are sort of hitting that $700 to $1,000 a day. So probably more around the $700 or $800, but up to $1,000 a day. And I've heard numbers a lot higher than that. How does that sit with you?
Look, I'm sitting actually around that $500-600 on an average. That's
awesome.
I'd say probably 6 to 7 hours of work, including travel. There's been days where I've been close to 700-800. That would be a big day for me. But
for sure. And given that your lifestyle is really valuable to you, and you're saying around 6 to 7 hour days, including travel, that is decent.
Yeah. And some days I could travel, as far as 30 minutes. Yeah, 30 minutes would be the longest distance I'd travel.
Awesome.
Yeah, then I might travel 20-15 minutes in between the jobs as well. Yeah. I mean, some days I might come, under $500, but then I might only work a few hours. So if it's only half a day
This is why I like to talk about different numbers, because everyone likes to brag about their best job, their best day. And I did this 14 years ago when I started up. I did an $800 day. And so people that were thinking about doing woodmaying, you can do $800 in a day. But I didn't tell them that was my best day. And my average was actually like 400, 500.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's important to be truthful to yourself for these things, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But the other one that I look at there is going, okay, if you turn over $800 once in a day, but your average is $500 a day, that means that it'll come out in the wash when you look at how much you turn over a week or a month. So
Oh
if you're doing
yeah,
$500 days, that's around $2,500 a week. If you're doing $800 days, that's more like $3,500 a week.
yeah. It adds up. Yeah.
A lot of people have been asking about which brand of battery tool to buy, and I don't like to recommend one brand of battery for everyone or every situation. Dealer support and access to parts and service all play a big role in that decision. Some brands have better tools for specific needs or each product category. I've been using a variety of brands, and I endeavour to provide unbiased interviews on Aussie Lawn Stars with as many of those product brands as possible. I reached out to Ego Power Plus through the podcast because of how Barry supports the industry and Ego owners. Barry has impressed me with his loyalty to customers in providing support and listening to the needs of the industry, which has resulted in a full lineup of new commercial tools landing in Australia over the last 12 months that has positioned Ego as a leader in the commercial tool space for outdoor power equipment. Visit egopowerplus.com.au to see if they have the tools you need today. So yeah, I think it's important for people to think about this when they're going into business, and it's good to hear where you're up to, and to see that balance between the lifestyle and knowing how your business is traveling financially.
Yeah. It's I feel like it's always been growing. It's still to this date. It's still growing.
Yeah. So when it's growing like that, and we've talked earlier about this, you've actually reduced your workload a little bit so that you have better mental health, better family time, and that makes you a happier person. So that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Are you looking at it going, okay, I want to improve my hourly rate or my daily rate, or grow the business? I know we mentioned putting on an employee. So is that where you're heading at the moment in terms of trying to grow, have enough work to have an employee busy with you?
Probably at the moment increasing my daily rate or hourly rate or daily rate or weekly rate even.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe from there on, when I feel comfortable with how much we're making, I'd probably be looking at employing someone. But at this
Yeah.
stage, I don't really feel comfortable yet. Yeah,
Yeah, fair enough.
yeah. I mean, I guess it's like with anything new that you haven't done before, It's
Well, that's really valuable what you've just said there, because I see this countless times. People starting a business are looking at doing it because they don't want to work for somebody else. And so they make themselves self-employed, which is essentially what a small business starts as, just being self-employed. But when you get too busy, instead of doing what you've done and going, all right, I'll cut back some of that work so that I can maintain my lifestyle, people start going straight into employing somebody without having thought about what it means to employ somebody, the cost of employing somebody, and how to manage employees and all that side of it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you've had experience outside of running your own business with employing people, then that might be a really natural step for you to take. But if that's something new to you, it can be pretty daunting.
Oh yeah, and it's something I have never done before. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'd highly recommend getting some advice sort of off Prez, because he's a bit of a guru when it comes to working with people.
Oh yeah. He is definitely.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah,
also
but that is
noticed.
a pretty big step. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have actually noticed and I've witnessed Tanel. He's got this really strange knack with just the timing of things, the way that he's able to wait for the right time is incredible. Like,
Yeah.
I might be like a bit pushy and like trying to get something like moving and done, and I'll get really excited and I want to do it, but he is able to just sit back and trust in the timing of things. So
Yeah.
I just know that when that is meant to happen and it's going to happen, it'll just flow. It's got this natural flow
Yeah.
to it, which is really nice.
Yeah, he's got to be ready to take on that new and exciting but daunting aspect of running a business.
Yeah.
So,
He also had said something recently which has stuck with me about, because when we were having this conversation more recently, he said, well, I don't feel comfortable employing someone if I haven't yet, been comfortable paying myself a wage even. Why would I then go and, which I thought was really sensible.
yeah, that is really important. There's a number that I have talked about with James Nankervis a long, long time ago. He's one of the people I interviewed early on, and you'd see his name come up in LMCA.
Oh, yeah.
But he stole this from his dad, I'm sure. That's the third rule. So if you're quoting an hourly rate, and an hourly rate is an easy one to do this with, but you can do it with different factors. You've got to pay your expenses and you've got to pay wages as a separate part of that, not just your normal expenses. And then you need profit. So if you break it into thirds and you go, okay, for an hour, and at the moment, $30 an hour for an employee is on the low side. $35 an hour is probably getting close to where it needs to be. But 30 is okay, right? But it is the starting point. So if you say $35 an hour for the employee, $35 an hour for expenses, and you need profit as well at about $35 an hour, one third.
Yeah.
That gives you a really good basis to start looking at how you quote a job and go, okay, if I need 35 times 3, what is that? Sorry, my maths has gone out the window. So we're talking $105 an hour is what you need if you're going to have an employee.
Yep.
And then you need to start factoring in unbillable hours. And unbillable hours will be different depending on whether it's you doing your book work, because you don't need your employee there while you're doing your book work. You're doing maintenance on your equipment or visiting the mower shop. You don't need your employee there when you do those things.
Yeah.
Or the travel time in between jobs and having a break, having a smoko or a lunch break. So when you start factoring in those aspects, you go, okay, the employee is going to be there for, say, a 7-hour day, but they're only going to do 6 hours or maybe even 5 hours of billable work.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's an interesting thing for you to start processing. And then when you quote your next job, you start going, hang on a minute, am I quoting enough to actually make it worthwhile so that I can draw a wage of $35 an hour for myself?
Yeah.
And then once I'm happy with that, then I could pay an employee to turn up and do that same work, and getting close to where you need to be. There are other ways to break that maths down, but I found that one really simple and easy.
I've heard that one before too.
Yeah. But I think that essentially covers it. You can do a lot more breaking down your expenses and looking at your unbillable hours as well, which I think is important to do at some stage. But initially, if you keep it simple like that, it's a good way to start processing it. And if you look at the Profit First, there's a book called Profit First, but the Profit First business model is one of separating your money. So whenever you get paid from a customer, you separate that money into separate pockets or bank accounts to account for all the different things that money's got to do. So that way it's not just sitting in there going, oh, let's go and get Domino's pizza for dinner. It's not just sitting there going, oh, let's go away for a family holiday. It's going, okay, when I do $100 job, I've got to pay myself profit, not just a wage, but profit. Then I've got to pay the wage, whether it's mine or the employee that's working for me. and I've got to pay the fuel and the insurance and all the other expenses. And I've got to be putting some money aside for a new mower because that Cub Cadet, while it's good, it's not going to last forever.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. No, yeah,
But,
we've started
yeah,
taking these steps. So, yeah.
Yeah, I highly recommend people look at that Profit First model or even buy the book, or there's a podcast, Profit First for Tradies, which is an Australian podcast, which
I
is
think
all
I've
about.
listened into that one, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Aussie Lawn Stars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.